Thanks so much for joining me on this video. Now, I almost made a huge error in titling this video, and I almost named it, Pastor, Stop Listening to This Now. And I was like, does that make sense to encourage people to stop listening to me right now? And I didn't think it did. So that's why I put stop listening to this person right now. So here's how I want to set this up today. Pastor Jerry Lawson and I are partners in this thing called 24 to Double. It's a 24-month church growth program. We'll talk about that some other time. If you want to find out more about it, go to 24trial.com. There's a link in the comments. But Jerry and I have been partnering on this program for about 6 years now, and we're kind of at a point where we're thinking, what's next? What's the next iteration of 24 to Double? What's the next evolution of how we're engaging with pastors and creating community around that? And there's a lot of things that we can do, frankly, Pastor. There's a million things, and there's a million things people are encouraging us to do. But then there's really just a few things that we really should do. And because there's so many things to do and so many things that I feel like we should do, I can tend to get stuck in deciding what we're actually going to do. And I know that a lot of you get that way too. There's so much information out there in church world of the things that every good church is doing, or to grow your church, you do this, or to have a healthy financial bottom line, you need to do this. There's just so much information that sometimes it can actually be paralyzing. And so I wanted to talk to you today about something that I just learned or am learning in reality that I think might be helpful to you. So some of you know that I also get the opportunity to host John Maxwell's podcast. It's called the John Maxwell Leadership Podcast. If you haven't checked it out, you really should. Just go to your podcast app and search for John Maxwell Leadership Podcast. But the really cool thing about that, and the biggest benefit for me in being able to host that, is once a month, twice a month, I get to go over there and spend some time with my great friends. And we do two things. We listen to John's teaching, and then we kind of reply or respond, here's what we think that means and how we might be able to use it in our business. It's a really cool format. But what it gives me the opportunity to do is really think about my business, thinking about this business of doing ministry with pastors, of encouraging pastors and helping pastors put systems into place. So last month I was over there and we were getting ready, this podcast ready, where Dr. Maxwell was talking about momentum, how to gain momentum and what happens when you lose momentum. And he made a statement that I thought would be super helpful to you because it's super helpful to me. He said many times when we're losing momentum, it's because we're not talking to ourselves enough and we're listening to ourselves too much. So we're listening to ourselves more than we're talking to ourselves. Now, Pastor, here's what that means for me. Many times I'm listening to the voices in my head. I've talked about many times I have a Moses complex that God's working out with me, meaning who am I to do this thing? Who am I to go out and impact churches across the country and in other countries? And even though we've been able to do that, I still feel a bit inadequate in being able to do that. And so here's what I've decided to do with this statement about talking to myself more, sitting down and doing my quiet times. I'm asking God, Lord, what are the things you want me to reinforce about myself, about the work that I'm doing day in and day out? So I could tell you what they are, but I don't know that if that's as meaningful for you as you sitting down and thinking through what's going to be the thought that you put on your mind. I play golf. I know many of you play golf. And what I found about my golf handicap is it tends to go down when I get singular in my swing thought. What's my one swing thought? If I got 6 things going on or even 3 that I'm working on at the same time in my golf swing, it just doesn't go well. So I wanted to challenge you today, Pastor, and say, what's that swing thought? What is the thing that God wants you to reinforce in yourself when the enemy comes along and tries to steal what God is doing in your ministry? And here's what I would recommend. Write it down. So pull your phone out. Well, you're probably watching this on your phone. But here's what I do. I pull out a note. I use Evernote. I also use a tablet where I write things down. But I try to get this content in a very accessible form, meaning in a note. And then what I do is I create reminders that pop up. So I use the reminders app. I use my alarms app. I use a lot of different things so that throughout the day, I get reminded of the thing that God wants me to think about, to tell myself instead of just listening to myself. In fact, today I've got an alarm that goes off, a countdown timer that goes off every hour. And it simply, it reminds me to ask this question: what am I holding on to that God wants me to let go of? Usually for me, it's something out in the future or an ideal or maybe even a vision or great things I want to do for the Lord. But today and probably tomorrow, I'm reminding myself every hour to ask that question: what is the thing that God is asking me to turn over to him? What's that thing for you, Pastor? What are you holding on to? What outcome are you trying to manipulate? What outcome are you trying to control? That God's just saying, hey, just trust me. You know, let me give you today your daily bread, and then we'll worry about tomorrow. Pastor, I hope that is super helpful to you. Let me know. Put in the comments what's the thing that you're holding on to, or if you want more tips and tricks on how I remind myself to do that, give me a comment on that as well, and maybe I'll just do a explainer video for how I do this. I got apps and all kinds of things. Just trying to make it way too complicated. That's it for me today. Hey, if you want to find out more about 24 to Double, again, I mentioned this earlier, go to 24trial. That's 24trial.com, and everything you need to know about this whole church discipleship model that we call 24 to Double is right there on that page. Otherwise, I will catch you on a live stream very soon. Oh, Pastor, if you're still with me, you're definitely the kind of pastor we're trying to impact. So if you go in the comments below, you'll see a button that says follow. Just click that. And then if you want to be notified when Jerry or I go live, just click the bell button and your phone will let you know when we go live. Thanks so much for being with me, Pastor. I'll catch you tomorrow.